On today's episode, we're talking about something that people don't openly talk about, which is butt stuff. Not that kind, but we will be talking about butt health and wellness. Chad O'Connell is the founder of Asset, a wellness and skincare company all focused on making your butt as comfortable as possible. What started as an awkward conversation is now becoming a full blown wellness movement. Asset has been featured on major publications such as The Die Line and High Sobriety, and it's quickly expanding. This episode isn't just about laughs. It's about how to take a taboo product category and build a brand that people don't just buy, but proudly talk about. Chad, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me on the brand study.
Happy to be here.
So, to kick things off, I would love to learn more about the brand and the products that you all sell.
So Asset is a derm-approved perianal skincare brand focused on health, hygiene, and aesthetics of the butt. Our first two products are focused on perianal skin. Whole Serum was our original product. It's a soothing daily moisturizing product for the butthole area, aka perianal skin. And it's for people who have experienced discomfort and sensitivities back there. And about half the population does, even though we don't talk about it. And to date, there was really no proactive solution. There was really just reactive steroid creams. And Whole Cleanser is designed specifically for that part of the body, and it's meant to replace the bar soap or body wash that you have in the shower, because those contain harsher, stronger surfactants. That squeaky clean feeling is the skin being stripped of the moisture barrier. And on that sensitive skin, for a lot of people, that is actually what leads to a lot of the problems they're experiencing. So the cleanser is incredibly gentle. It's a cream-based cleanser that actually supports the moisture barrier and the microbiome back there. So you can feel clean without actually disrupting that part of the body.
And I have so many questions about really how you got into this category. I'd love to learn about the journey, maybe a year or two before starting the brand. What were you doing? Was there a key moment, a personal experience where you really saw that this was a need in the market?
Yeah, technically, I have to go back a little further than a year or two. We spent 2 years in R&D just on Whole Serum. But long story short, I have struggled with sensitive skin back there my whole life. When I was a kid, I had hard stools, which mean I had to strain to go to the bathroom. I had to take medication for that. And then as an adult, I just always struggled with on and off hemorrhoids and fissures. And I tried every product. Nothing actually solved the problem. It was just like a temporary ease of the symptoms. But either way, that was my normal. And I didn't really talk about it with people, and went on and had an advertising career. And through that, I learned one, I loved branding and storytelling. And I was working so hard for other people's products and services. I was like, man, I should do this for myself and I should build my own brand. And at the time I was working at Ogilvy, and I quit, liquidated my 401k, and threw myself off the entrepreneur cliff and started a bidet company originally, which did help just by reducing the friction from dry wiping. And as I thought about like, how does this grow into something more? And I was imagining this larger world of butt care products. I was doing some creative writing and landed on the word asset. And I was like, oh man, this is the brand. This is the word that captures the idea that I've been thinking about. And so I sunset the bidet company and started building Asset. And it took at least 2 years to build a brand, find the right chemist who could land the formula with me. And then we launched. It was a culmination of multiple forces.
And I think everyone, as a human, we've all been there. We've all had, either food poisoning, or I feel like there is kind of a movement. Just seeing more on social media about like new bidet companies and people, talking about butt care just more openly, like it's any other part of your body. So I feel like the timing is interesting, and people are just speaking about their personal bodies just a lot more openly. What was the first time, like when you pitched to your friends and family that you're going to be starting a butt skincare line? How did that conversation go?
Yeah. I mean, family wasn't too thrown by it just because I've always been someone I had already started the bidet company. The question behind the question is, it's a taboo topic. A lot of people don't even talk about it with their partner they live with in some cases, much less, to the whole world, or standing up in front of a room full of people and pitching it. And I find that there's like two kinds of people. There's the kind of person who already has a a routine for back there or and likely experiences some kind of irritation or has gone through a bout of irritation and they're like it clicks immediately. And then there's the other people who've hasn't really experienced anything back there and it's kind of been this thoughtless part of their body that they've never really considered. So their first instinct is like more jokey and funny, which is fine. I mean, we're talking about butts, so like you have to embrace the humor of it all. But then once you explain to them, like it's just like any other part of the body, and it experiences irritation and discomfort for all kinds of reasons, for men, for women, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. It's a sensitive skin area, and as you get older, it gets thinner and more prone to irritation. So honestly, in like a quick conversation with most people, they're like, "I see it. Why doesn't that already exist?"
And how has education on a mass and at scale, like how has that taken place? Because in the advertising world, it's, some people are just not aware of that problem at all. Some people are solution aware, some people are product aware, some people are very aware and ready to purchase and take action. How do you frame education at those different stages of buyer intent?
Education is important. It's also very expensive, right? To take people through a funnel of education. So I mean, really, with any startup, instead of going wide and trying to like speak to everybody and trying to educate the least likely to buy person, that is an expensive strategy for a scrappy startup that I'm unable to do. So for me, it's I'm starting the business from a problem aware audience, someone who already or solution aware, someone who's already using other products back there that may have not been designed for back there, or they know they have a problem and they want something for it. And by starting the conversation there with those people, it makes it much easier to find like your initial body of people who are most in need of what you're selling. And then from there, then we will migrate out and try to speak to a broader audience and a broader audience and a broader audience.
Absolutely. I saw on your website that you all surveyed, I'm assuming either people or your customers, that 93% reported having some sort of issue with irritation and just having, problems back there. Was that stat surprising to you that nearly, almost everyone's having some sort of irritation or problem on their back end?
I ran that survey before I ever it may have been before I even thought of the word asset, or it was around the time it was in the early days when I was trying to validate my assumptions and my research. And so I did a survey monkey with, I think it was like 583 people. I think it was how many took it. And that particular question was, have you ever experienced a butt problem? And, you know, butt problems range from like hemorrhoids and fissures to like excessive itching or unwanted hair. Like a lot of people are grooming back there because they're so hairy that it's either difficult to maintain proper hygiene or they just want better aesthetics back there, as well as like the cheeks themselves. There's people have marks, scars that they don't want back there, or even just muscle and nerve pain back there. So just generally butt problems. And 93% of people said they raised their hand, I've had a butt problem. And then the survey went deeper into like exploring some of those areas.
Yeah. And was that the key? Was that the key piece of information that you used that survey was to validate before you jumped in? Were there other ways that you validated the need?
Sure. There are definitely other ways to validate it. Just doing research that's publicly available on the products that currently do exist, just doing market research and product research. And most of what's a lot of products I had used myself, before I started this brand, like a preparation age or just other body moisturizers or trying like a tincture of oil that has got a botanical extract that is shown to help back there. The survey validated that a lot of people do have problems. A lot of people don't talk about those problems, which is why some people they're like, "What? You're starting a butt brand? Like, I've never heard of that, or why would that need to exist?" And usually it's somebody who hasn't had any kind of issue. But the last question, I wanted to be more creative with it, and so the question was, "Have you ever seen your own butthole?" It was a very fun question. It's a stat that I go back to all the time. When you look at all the people, 50% of people have seen their butthole and 50% of people have never looked at their butthole. Even if you separate the survey by men only or women only or millennials or Gen X, it was always about 50-50. When I filtered the survey results to only people who've looked at their butthole, they way over indexed with the brand. So I was like, I'm always kind of jokingly, but not jokingly asking myself, like, how do I build a gravity where anyone who's ever looked at their butthole like knows to find us? Because if they've looked at their butthole, and you should, it's a good way to like, just like every part of your body, you should inspect it and make sure everything is healthy. But generally, people who have either are grooming it or they've had irritation and they're trying to see what's going on back there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like that one key statistic just shows like the behavior of that consumer. Do you have any key insights on like how you reach those specific type of people? Like, are you running meta ads?
If only it was easy enough on Meta to target anyone who's looked at their butthole, but they don't have that data. So, you know, Meta used to be more heavy handed with targeting and demographics and uploading lists and all this human intervention to like define all these aspects about the person. And now it's completely flipped, where the recommended practice is broad targeting and allow the creative to build the audience. Because just like organic content, whenever someone posts something, it puts it in front of people. And based on you swiping past it or hanging on it, it starts to learn like, oh, the kind of person who wants to see it. So really we build ads that speak to that problem, some that are leaning more towards a certain audience, like a male audience or a female audience. It either works or it doesn't. And it's kind of the way of targeting now is just simply let the messaging and art do the targeting for you.
And coming back to product development, how did you find your co-packer, your manufacturer? Did you work with dermatologists? Like, what was that process to actually getting this product to market?
Yeah, I mean it was a process. I am not, I come from liberal arts background school and then was a creative in advertising, not a business major, didn't like Excel spreadsheets. I didn't come with any like pre-existing tools for this stuff. So it's really just every day trying to figure it out and trying to talk to people who are smarter than me and just even if I'm starting with, a lot of times it's like I'm starting with someone who's not the person, but I've just made a point to talk to 5 or 10 people every single week and ask for introductions, and then little by little I built the network up. And in terms of building the product, like, I started from a place of like, I have no idea how to build a formula. I actually ended up working with multiple labs. It took until I hit my fourth chemist. I was able to land the formula with them. But most of the time, you're finding either a mid-size or large lab that has a bunch of skincare formulas they make. And then you're trying to tell them what you want to do. And in most cases, for the entire body, head, face, body, they're taking an off the shelf formula and they're adding some custom ingredients per what you're trying to do. So the R&D is like very light. And for this product, whole serum, you can't build it that way. And so it was a real difficulty trying to R&D with these labs that really were not set up for innovative R&D. Because, and the reason it's difficult is because there's no airflow between your cheeks. All skincare relies on evaporation or alcohol in the formula to help it disperse and fall away. But between the cheeks, like, you absolutely cannot use drying alcohols. That's incredibly irritating. And there's no airflow. And it's really problematic if the skin is wet at all. Like, it's important to properly dry to get out of sweaty clothes. And if you're using a formula back there, like, it can't stay wet back there because that can lead to more irritation. So designing that base alone, much less the ingredients that are actually having an effect, was tricky. For me, it was a ton of research, becoming like an armchair chemist and like an armchair anal skin student of like, what is the skin back there? What's happening just below the skin? How do these irritations occur? It it took me over 100 or over 80 iterations. Really, it was probably over 100 and 4 different chemists until I found a chemist that had their own independent lab. There weren't layers between me and the chemist. There wasn't an account person, a project manager, and a chemist. That was my big problem with a lot of these places. Is like, I'm a creative at heart. I'm used to talking to designers, illustrators, photographers, and having a back and forth. I'm sharing my thoughts, they're sharing theirs, and we're by the end of the conversation, we've arrived at something we didn't have at the beginning of it. And I couldn't do that back and forth with all these labs until I found somebody that was like my chemist soulmate. And we just clicked like I used to click with like a good copywriter, art director team. In this case, his superpower was cosmetic chemistry. And it was night and day working with him as someone that I could text, have daily phone calls with, send me formulas. A week later, he could send me more formulas. And we were able to like rapidly prototype and get through hurdles that I was never able to get through with the other companies.
Yeah, to not work with a giant machine where there's all these other people involved and you just like got right to the source and you can just really collaborate. Was there ever a moment where you thought that the product wasn't ever going to be made or you were going to have to scrap the idea?
Maybe some people would have hit that, but I guess I mean I am very persistent, and I mean I absolutely felt like this could exist based on another part of the R&D process is buying tons of other products and trying to find common language with the chemists and like nuanced stuff, like the difference between like the a more of a wetter finish versus a more of a matte finish, like how quickly it disappears. There's so much stuff out there. So, a lot of it is sampling other products and then finding something maybe close to as a description, but then, even further articulating how it needs to be different from that one.
And then when you were testing these different rounds, like did you have people enrolled to like actually use the different versions and provide feedback?
I needed it to work for me first. There were some periods where I'm like, I mean, it took me a year and a half before I met the chemist that actually was able to make progress with. So all the other time, I mean, it's expensive for it to take that long because I'm spending 9 months with a manufacturer, and we're at the third round and we're not there on multiple dimensions. And I'm incredibly particular about like the trying to perfect this thing, and we're so far away. So I think a lot of people could have given up, but for me, it was just like, all right, I'm gonna, you know, pay myself nothing, live off, or pay myself little to nothing, ask my student loan companies to suspend my payments, and just like try to stretch every dollar because we've got to get this correct. Otherwise, the entire thing will fail. Good advertising makes a bad product fail faster. In order for the company to work, like the product's got to be great. So I was the first guinea pig to answer your question. I still am. And then before we launched Whole Serum, I did get into the hands of 50 to 100 people, have them do a survey on it just to make sure that, like, how is it affecting other people's bodies as well? And then we continue to iterate after launch and refine it and get feedback from now a larger audience. But we take the necessary steps, have a dermatologist review it, have a toxicologist review it. Our chemist is incredibly skilled and understands how to formulate properly.
Absolutely. And there's always kind of a give and pull when it comes to formulation because sometimes you can have the perfect formulation, but it doesn't scale or can't be commercialized at the level to be a mass market product. How did you find that balance of formulation and scalability with the ingredients?
I didn't focus on scalability first, but it was always a gut check, like, how much is this going to cost in the end? Ultimately, I probably have built something that is a little less scalable, but we've built the business in a way that ultimately we'll be able to get past that hurdle as we get bigger. Right now, it's the way we've gotten past it now is that we've actually built kind of a unique setup. I'm fortunate enough to have been able to hire our chemist full time, and we have the lab. So we have fully become integrated on the supply chain side of, like, yes, we bring in bottles, but I'm not working with a third party lab. Like, we are the lab now. We do the R&D and we do the mass production and the filling. And so we can move incredibly nimble. We can continue to optimize. And then, there will be formulas that our particular space can't do. And then the question is, do we invest in equipment or do we outsource it to someone else? And it's a little bit of both, depending on what the requirements are. Fortunately, our chemist has a lot of people in his network and even in his family who are also involved in skincare, and we already know where we're going to need to go if we need to scale in certain ways.
So you all do everything in house, all the formulation and mixing and filling.
We do, yeah, we have a lab separate. That's not in Oregon where we're based, and we handle all that. And then we actually still do the fulfillment ourselves as well. Every order is boxed and sent out by us because it's another one where it's like I've done 3PLs, third party logistics companies. The Whisper Bidet, that one, I was 100% 3PL. It went from the manufacturer to a 3PL, and I never handled that inventory. In this case, we wanted to also do that ourselves and just be able to understand the kitting and make changes on the fly and then go to a 3PL. But we just, once we hit like what we thought would be our threshold, we're like, maybe we can handle more. And then it just got bigger and bigger. And we're like, we can continue to do this. So the fulfillment side is a question we continue to ask ourselves. But for now, we can provide faster, better, cheaper quality, like because we have full
Yeah.
control. Ask any founder that uses a 3PL and they'll tell you nightmare stories because it's just notoriously difficult and all kinds of problems happen.
Oh, 100%. And do you feel like your experience with a Whisper kind of gave you the tools, like the entrepreneurial chops needed to roll into Asset?
100%. I mean, my career in advertising taught me communication, branding, storytelling. Then Whisper was completely self funded, liquidated my 401k, threw myself into the unknown and just grinded through every aspect of it myself. Made the logo, made the website, met my suppliers, and used the tools I know how to help aid the design. I launched, I did some PR, I was learning Facebook, making the ads, managing QuickBooks for the first time, and it just a complete master class and all this stuff. And then I went back into full-time ad work because I ran out of money, and I, couldn't defer my student loans anymore. And so I was back again working with big budgets for Fortune 500 companies on the one hand, and then nights and weekends I'm working with a tiniest shoestring budget and learning like the lowest end of like the beginnings of a startup. And I did that for 5 years. And then I took all that knowledge with me into building Asset.
I hear that story so often. And would you say I always see entrepreneurship and building a product and a brand. It's really like a two-prong approach. Like obviously you need to have the product, but then selling the product and getting the product into people's hands. Which one would you say is the harder of the two for you and Asset?
Probably building the business and selling to customers and trying to scale it up. Like, I think it's a great idea and we have a great brand and that makes the selling part easier. Great brand, great product people love, they come back for, which does make selling it easier. But, at the end of the day, like a lot of people have great ideas. Execution is what makes something really work. And it's hard and it's still hard. I'm over the year and a half mark with Asset and I got from 0 to 1. Now I'm trying to figure out how the hell to go from 1 to 10. And that is a whole new thing. And I'm having to surround myself with completely new people who know different things than the people who helped me get from 0 to 1. Um, and it's a journey that you never stop learning.
I hear that a lot, that the product is incredibly challenging, but then to commercialize the product and to scale it beyond that, first mark is even more challenging.
What makes it extra challenging is the complexity. I'm building a product, I'm building a brand, I'm building a website, and it's like there's not that much complexity there. But then when you are building the business and trying to sell and scale it, I'm trying to manage the business, figure out like what are the jobs to be done, who's going to do those jobs. Like I'm trying to do all of them right, do a little bit, but I need to get other people in. But then I'm still also trying to build the brand because I there's a lot more brand to build and there's a lot more products to build. So now I'm both trying to build the business, scale the business while still doing R&D, and it's the complexity just like it's insane how as small as my business is, when I think about bigger businesses like Amazon or something, it makes my head explode because I realize how much complexity is in my tiny business for a brand like Amazon to exist and on all the others, Apple, I'm just like, it's insane how many you don't even quantify how many things are happening and connecting and matching to make those types of things, those big businesses work.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like when you start getting the product into people's hands, that's ultimately when fires start happening. Then you have to
Mm.
deal with logistics and you're getting shipments that could be faulty, or customers are receiving their product and, the shipping and handling was rough on the product. And there's customer service and there's cash flow and there's salaries and there's managing all the aspects. It's like once you have the product, then kind of the problems that come with any business start popping up left and right.
You know, building the product and the brand is like working out, putting on the uniform and stretching out on the starting blocks. And now you've got a marathon in front of you. And it's not a normal marathon. It's a Tough Mudder times 1,000. There's all
Yeah,
kinds of fires and obstacles and challengers, and it's a whole different game.
it's like a marathon meets meets a football match. You have people coming after you trying to tackle you while you're running a marathon. And getting into the growth playbook, how'd you make your first sale, and how are you currently scaling?
Yeah. First sale, that was like a very fun period because after all that time and effort and, for several years that went into getting asset ready for launch, by the time we got to the point of actually pressing the go button, we had depleted almost all of our money. We were at the point where it's like, am I going to get an Uber job on the weekend to keep doing this? And, my business partner as well. And and at that point, we had the website, we had the product, and I made some ads and I launched it on Meta. And it was nothing more than that. No PR, no big splashy campaign, not even infos. I mean, a lot of people probably launch with a lot more in place, but it was where we were at. I didn't want to delay the launch to try to get more launch tactics in place. Like, let's just launch this thing and then we'll keep doing more. And so it wasn't some big launch moment. It was turning on Facebook ads. And, it happened on December 17th. So it was like after the Black Friday Cyber Monday rush. I was in a cabin with some of my friends and then I was with family. So I wasn't even in my normal routines. And it was super fun because I pressed the start, I launched the ads. Day one, no sales. Day two, no sales. Day three, two sales. Day four, four sales. And then eight. And by the end of the week, by like the seventh or 10th day, we were doing 50 orders a day. And I was with like my family back at home around the holidays and it was like a very exciting time seeing those numbers, seeing the phone light up and the orders start coming through. And it locked in like the advertising, the messaging, what the product is, the website experience, it just locked in. A year before I launched, I had already built the website and already tested meta ads. And that's like a whole nother interesting tactic that someone taught me. And it was a really smart way to do it where you basically build out the website, you make it look as real as possible, and then you launch real ads and you just disable the credit card swipe. It doesn't authorize the card, but you're trying to get someone to like, will someone actually convert on this product and this message I put on for them? It's one thing to click on the ad and they land on the website. Do they then go to the product page? Do they add it to cart? Do they put in their credit card information? There's like all those steps that need to take place. And experience tells you like you're going to launch and maybe the ads don't work. And then you'll spend 3 weeks changing the ads and then you'll get people to click through on them, but then they'll bounce off the website real quick. Maybe your pricing is wrong. And you have to like diagnose all these steps in the buyer journey
Mm.
until it finally works. So my expectation was like it would take 2 to 3 months to bump into these problems and solve them. But I had pre-tested it, and then when we launched it, it took off.
That's awesome. So before you even had a product, so you were working on formulation at the same time you were testing demand with ads on a website that looked real. You had product renders and just basically doing all that testing and experimenting with different copy,
Yeah.
different ad formats, different landing pages, and seeing what was working when you didn't even have product in hand.
It's one of those things that I had never thought of. I was already a year into R&D, and then I talked to another founder, which is something I always tell like you do not try to do this in a box. Like do not isolate yourself. Talk to everyone, talk to other founders, especially other founders because you know, it's the kind of conversation you have with another founder is unlike another conversation you have with anyone just because you guys you share the same problems and you speak a similar language. And somebody told me like, hey, like there's a way to test this out. And so as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to do that. And I did. And I spent money on Facebook ads and I ran it through like 50 to 100 conversions. So then I suddenly had real data, like 100 people have attempted to buy this product. And now I have a click through rate. I have a, you know, cost per acquisition. I have all these foundational metrics that are much better than just like broad assumptions on what it'll be. I highly recommend that anyone who's considering before you go invest years and time and tons of money, like come up with some kind of test that like proves out like you can acquire a customer basically. Most founders fail because they can't figure out how to acquire a customer. They got a great idea, a great product, can't figure out how to acquire a customer.
I'm a big believer that in any business, sales ultimately fixes any problem, almost any problem that you're facing in business. If you can just make sales, you're going to be able to make up for it and you'll have extra cash flow. You can hire someone or bring in a consultant or buy a new shipment, like whatever the problem is, like if you have extra sales coming in. So to have that information and then you'll be able to forecast. So based on that data, were you able to create models? You're like, okay, X, Y, and Z investment, X, Y, and Z cogs, and you're able to like forecast what the business could potentially do at different investment rounds.
Absolutely. I mean, part of raising money as well is being able to pitch your brand idea, pitch your product idea, but then also pitch like how does the business work? What are your underlying assumptions? And this was all new to me as well. But because I'm very passionate and believe in the brand and the product, and it has personally helped me, I have all the attention in the world to figure out how do I build a model to test this out. And so I built the first model, just like a simple model, just like you said, plugging in these different assumptions, like how much does it cost me to make this product? How much does it cost me to acquire a customer? You know, you just layer on all of the costs to get the product to the customer. And you really do need to understand. A lot of people will build a product and never really understand that math, and then they'll find out they have no money built in to actually acquire the customer. The most expensive part of the puzzle is acquiring the customer. It's not building the product. Half of the money that goes out of asset is just to acquire a customer. The other half is to design new products, get the inventory, all the logistics, paying salaries, all these things. So acquisition is everything. And it's a crazy, gigantic beast, and there's a million ways to do it, but you got to figure that out somehow. I mean, break even acquisition. That is what you need to understand, like fully loaded cost of goods. It's not just like the bottle costs this much and the formula costs this much. You need to factor in how much am I paying in freight? How much am I paying in domestic trucking? How much money do I expect for like the credit card transaction fee when they swipe their card? There's like a bunch of little fees that start to stack up, and you need to account for all those and still have money left over to give to Meta to put the ad in front of a lot of people to find someone. And in the 20 teens, everyone was acquiring customers at a loss, right? They were spending $100 to sell a $50 product, and that was like the norm. And now that is not the norm, and that is not how you have to build healthy from the beginning. And healthy is either break even or profitable on the first customer, and then you don't start making money until they come back again. So the product has got to deliver, because if they never come back, then you're never going to make money.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a classic LTV to CAC ratio. How much are they going to spend over lifetime value or over 3 to 5 years versus how much did it cost to bring them in? And from what I've heard, it's gotten a lot more expensive to acquire customers via Google, Meta, TikTok. How are you managing those increased costs to acquisition?
You know, the first 6 months, because we were positioned at people who are problem aware, or maybe they didn't know our brand, but they were aware that solutions could exist. Targeting those people, the first 6 months, we actually did see acquisition costs that were reminiscent of like 2015, where we were acquiring customers for less than $10. And just because we were targeting like the people who wanted us the most, there was no competition for this exact type of product. And so the first 6 months, we actually did make profit from new customers. At some point, like that just starts to level out and increase, but then level out. And then you have to expand who I'm targeting, where I'm targeting them, and try to hold that break even line unless you have tons of funding and you're willing to invest it other places.
Are you still focused on direct to consumer online and Meta, or have you expanded to marketplaces, retail? Like, what's your channel mix looking like?
I'm basically in the process of standing up proper growth testing. So dedicating some money to test TikTok, to test Reddit, to test not just Google, but Bing search engine and test, all these different places. So primarily we've been focused on Facebook, on Instagram, influencer marketing, and search and shopping on Google. But there's so many more channels, and that is kind of there's to this day, like Meta is still by and large like the most effective place. A lot of people say Meta doesn't work anymore, but I would argue your creative doesn't work or your product isn't working. You may have like a creative messaging problem, not a Meta problem.
Mm.
And outside of we're primarily focused on D2C, but I am also testing other channels, IRL, like, and trying to just wrap my head around what would that business model look like if we were being sold in certain types of stores or certain type of places. So we have like a full on traction necessarily there yet, but we are discovering retail and wholesale right now.
Do you feel like being in this taboo category, a category that people don't often talk about, do you think that's ultimately an advantage for your brand and product?
Um, Advertising, one of the things I taught me was because I had great creative director bosses. The tension is really good. Like when you have like a good idea, whether it's just like an ad campaign or a product or a brand, like tension, you want tension in it. Like, and taboo is tension. Like, oh, it's something we don't talk about. We're talking about it. Like, so it's immediately the taboo is like enough for someone to slow down and lean in, and that's great. I mean, that you want that. You either have to like fabricate it through like a campaign that's provocative, but for us it's in our DNA, like the name of the brand, the name of the products, like the area we're helping, it's all taboo. So that is a strength, but it's a double-edged sword because Meta does not like butt cracks, and the AI algorithm of censorship does not like butt cracks, doesn't like the word butt or at. Like there's we're discovering, and they're kind of a black box. There isn't like a clear list, like, oh, don't do this, do this. It's very, very broad, and it can be very stifling. And I originally was focused on our very first photo shoot. I was solely focused on like the art of asset and trying to capture like the embodiment of the brand. And I produced a shoot in Portland where, the idea of the brand is that you are healthy and confident in your body, and you don't care who sees your butt. So it was an all nude shoot, and people, but it was zero sexuality. It was just moments in life where you're living confidently and you don't care who sees your butt. So it's like streaking, maybe tanning, different moments in the house, like, and they're shot from behind, and they were beautiful. And most of them have not seen the light of day because I quickly found out that you can't show butt crack. Maybe I can get away with. At first, I thought I could get away with like 10% of a butt crack. Now it's like maybe I can get away with 1% of a butt crack, and I'm even getting flagged for like statues, for like the statue of David, David's butt, and things like that. And it's tricky. And when I opened our TikTok account as an example, I simply wrote in the byline, the first butt wellness company, and we got banned for 48 hours. It's a thing. Like it's definitely a challenge. It's a pro and a con, but it's just a matter of like learning how to maneuver in these spaces.
Yeah, it's like the logistics and the bureaucracy behind the platforms that ultimately brands rely on to get the messaging out. So I assume you're getting a lot of ads that are quote unquote like violating terms of service, violating community guidelines.
And constantly appealing, winning majority of the appeals, but not always. And you're almost never dealing with a human. It's it's difficult, but we're we're making our way through it.
Yeah. And when you were working on the branding and copywriting and positioning, did you account for any of this, of how Meta and the algorithms and the platforms, any of their guidelines, or did you really just focus on the brand from a holistic perspective?
I did not think about it at all when I was building the brand. I was just focusing on like the pure vision that I had for this company and the products that we're going to make, and just like a naive creative, just completely focusing on it. And I'm glad I did. Like I wouldn't have wanted to build the brand thinking about all the censorship stuff. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, it's just a problem that needs a creative solution. And That's really what my superpower is. And any good business owner has to be able to do that. So I'm glad I didn't build the brand like nerfing it ahead of time, because on certain platforms, we don't have to worry about it. We can be fully ourselves. Like podcast, we're just starting to test on podcasts, and I don't have to worry about nerfing the brand wants to speak, or the way the host wants to talk about their authentic experience with butt problems or whatever. So ultimately, yeah, the core of the brand like does not live up to meta censorship, but I mean, there's a way to figure that out.
You can always scale it back for the platform. Whereas if you start already at 50%, that kind of becomes your 100 and you're not able to go beyond that. I think ultimately being unapologetic about who you are and the problems that people face, you can always, like you said, you can always find a workaround when it comes to copy or how you talk about that or imagery. Like you can always find little censorship, creative censorship ideas that are
Yeah.
platform specific, but on your website, like you can be who you are, and like that is the asset brand.
Kind of. Yes, because there are things on the website I had to change and take down because Meta is plugged into the store. It's plugged into the product catalog, and it will crawl your web pages. And so that's a big thing. And like for instance, all that beautiful photography we made originally, I'm like, this needs to live somewhere. Like I want to make like big framed, like nice framed photographs. Some of this stuff should be hanging in people's houses. And at the very least, we made a pack of postcards that have this imagery completely as is meant to be viewed, and like really nice artist print postcards. But even those postcards on that page, I don't sell them on Meta. They just live on the website. I had to nerf those because Meta crawled into the website and was like, butt crack, butt crack, butt crack. And it's just like the flags are wildly inaccurate. It's claiming, nudity, sexual, like solicitation. There's no nuance for intimate wellness. But and this isn't a new problem. Like, you know, brands like Hims and Hers like see this type of thing, or THC CBD brands, they get it harder than anyone. So there's a handful of categories and other founders that I'm able to talk to about this stuff, and we can combine our experiences and figure out new ideas.
Yeah. And do you feel like humor could be is an angle and a tool in your brand kit to kind of circumvent some of those restrictions on platform?
100%. I mean, two things before I answer that last one, which is whenever you're put into a constraint and you're forced to come up with a new way at it, you'll often come up with an even better idea. So someone's like, we don't have enough money to do it that way. Figure out how to do it with less money. Or in this case, it's like, hey, you can't say this on Meta. You can't show this image on Meta. Then you're forced to come up with a new solution. And oftentimes it's less obvious and more creative and better than the original solution. So in some ways, I invite the constraint because it forces you into a new creative idea. Um, and regarding like humor, when we were designing the brand, before we made the logo type and everything, we anchored it in three words. And one of those words was wit, because I knew humor is essential because we're dealing with butts. And like, you have to disarm the taboo with humor. You have to understand that like we don't take ourselves too serious. Like we're talking butts. So as much as we are serious about the products and what goes into it, like the conversations we have and how we meet people where they're at, humor is absolutely a part of it. The distinction is it's not slapstick, easy humor. It's wit. That's chose that word
Mm.
specifically because I wanted it to be smarter, maybe less obvious humor, because I am balancing humor with credibility. And some brands are like purely credibility driven and very serious and take themselves serious. Whereas I'm building a fun brand that's also credible. And so it is a balancing act between those two worlds.
No, I could definitely see the balance behind that because, it can be serious for some people depending on their medical conditions, and it could be really, providing them a much higher quality of life like on a day-to-day basis. So I think the whole spectrum of severity, and it's like striking that balance of still being lighthearted and like you said witty, but also still recognizing the severity of some people's experiences. And do you think there's a generational component of people connecting with the brand?
We are speaking to exactly the audience I thought we would be speaking to, which is predominantly millennials and young Gen Xers. So like 30 to 45. There are people in their 20s, people 50, 60, 70 that also buy, but our core audience is in that like 30 to 45-ish range, primarily because for a number of reasons. One is, you know, as you get older, your skin gets thinner, and the skin back there is already very delicate. So, there's a handful of like pretty popular statistics that have come up, at least regarding hemorrhoids and fissures, where by age 50, 50% of people will have experienced a hemorrhoid. By 75, 75% of people will have experienced a hemorrhoid. And we're not focused on hemorrhoids necessarily, but it's probably the most popular irritation that people have heard of. So yeah, it does skew. Like the older you get, the more likely you're going to experience that irritation. Plus, like as you get older, there's all these other like lifestyle factors that contribute and maybe make some people more prone to having a problem back there. For instance, being pregnant, having a baby. 3 in 4 women experience hemorrhoids and fissures during that, and a lot of them experience it lingering problems afterwards. When I grew up, I had constipation, hard stools leading to straining, sitting on a toilet longer than you want to. That can lead to hemorrhoids. Most Americans are wiping with dry paper. Bidets are popular, but wiping is still the dominant, and that is abrasive, and it can create little micro tears. The soaps and the shampoos you're using are stripping it. There's all these factors. People are taking GLP-1s now. They're taking lots of supplements. That's disrupting their gut. They're having more diarrhea or hard stools. There's all these aspects that contribute to it. And as you get older, you're just more susceptible for those things to start creating, you know, stressed skin, inflammation, excessive itching, a hemorrhoid, a fissure, etc.
Yeah. And are you able to actually make those claims? Like, or are they considered medical claims from a compliance standpoint of like preventative care?
Yeah. So those are drug claims, and
Okay.
whole serum and whole cleanser are cosmetics. So it's another one it's tough to get right, but we do it as best we can. We don't name specific conditions because at the end of the day, as much as I'm actually not focused on that hemorrhoid and that fissure. The body's incredibly good at healing itself, regenerating itself. That's just like what the body does. But if you're constantly adding stressors and stripping the skin, maybe that area is lacking some nourishment or moisture or some molecule that would help the body's natural ability to retain an optimal state. That's what we're focused on. It makes it a little harder to communicate. There are other products we could make that would be drug products where we could say those things. But right now, our products are focused on an optimal routine back there and a daily skincare routine so that your body can be at its best state. And so if I'm really trying to focus the messaging on that, um, and it's working pretty well. I mean, people do chime in the reviews, and they'll say I was having these types of problems, and now I'm not, and I keep using it, and I'm still feeling good back there. So it's kind of like chapped lips or something, or having acne. It's like if you're using a daily moisturizer or you're putting something on there, you can kind of get ahead of it because that part of the body is either lacking something or you are introducing a stressor to it. So if you can figure that out, you can kind of help the skin do its own thing to be optimal. And essentially that's what we're trying to do with these two products.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the reason I asked that question, I used to work at a vitamin and nutraceutical
Mhm.
company. Most, basically 100% of vitamins are not covered under the FDA. You have to put that, not approved by the FDA standards. And yeah, how we talked about the benefits and what the product actually did was really a fine line. And we worked a lot with legal and compliance to be able to essentially make claims without making claims.
Yeah. I mean, it is a nuanced thing. It's like, man, it's like you personally know I have a great product, and there's even white papers on these ingredients. It's all this stuff. It's like I can't actually say it. And you have to find creative solutions to that. I mean, the FDA is important. I mean, it prevents people from making egregious products and making egregious claims and scaring people. But for a startup with like a scrappy amount of cash, like it is a tough thing, and it's a constant thing. And as we mature and get bigger, like we can spend more money to get more legal reviews and help us, make sure we're being as compliant as possible.
Yeah. And what do you think is next for Asset beyond whole serum and the cleanser? Do you have any products that you maybe want to tease that are in the product roadmap?
I will tease that we are working on products and I'm excited. You may see something this year. You'll definitely see some couple of things next year, but I'm going to keep it tight-lipped for now.
Yeah, that's totally
Yeah.
fair. And do you see the market overall growing? Are you seeing new competitors coming into the butt care wellness space?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even zooming back further, earlier our conversations about taboo and wellness and this feeling like it's normalized. 15 years ago, adults were not using wet wipes really. Now there's national TV spots for wet wipes. And then intimate care, taboo problems, vaginal wellness, these are all, manscape, like these are all things that started happening in the mid teens and into, 2020. And then asset is kind of like the last frontier of the body that has not been giving the proper treatment for developing products. And so I do think people have been warming up to it for the last maybe 15 or 20 years. And now, we got out there and now there are other companies that are in the butt care space, if you will. And technically, the space has always been there. There's been like a bunch of butt products that existed from other companies, but there was no brand that was like all about the butt. And that was what led to Ask That. Like that is what we did is like, man, just because I was trying to solve my problems and it's like there was no one place to look. It was like there's all these wipes, all these bidets, all these skincare products. A lot of them were like they were from brands that were focused only on women or only on gay men. And even in a lot of those cases, they still weren't making the products that I needed to solve my problem. So Asset was kind of like the idea was like, we're a butt expert brand. We're a butt care expert brand. That's what we do. We're not about men or women or what your sexuality is. We're about helping you have the best version of your butt. Um, Kind of went off on a tangent there, but yes, I mean, that's what we're focused on. And we're trying to help anyone who wants their butt to feel better or look better.
Yeah, just how Nike says that everyone is an athlete, everyone also has a butt.
Yes, exactly.
And what are some like key assumptions and lessons that you've learned along the way that you maybe didn't know when you first started? I'm sure there's a long laundry list.
Yeah. It's I could probably think on this for a couple hours and come back with better answers, but a couple of things come to mind. One is assume nothing. On the one hand, you're going to make a ton of assumptions. But when I say assume nothing, it's like test your assumptions. Even though you're like, oh, this platform isn't going to work for me, or this ad, I don't like this ad, let's not run it. You'd be surprised. And it's better it depends on the situation, but assume nothing is kind of one, like test everything. You can make your best ad or thing. You can use your best assumptions to make a thing, but you got to test everything and then talk to a lot of people. And just talk to founders, do get investors. I'm sure people have bad experiences with investors, but you know, we we try to find everyone we work with, including investors, that they're not an asshole. And so far, like we have a great group of people. Everyone's really friendly and believes in the mission and what we're doing. And by having conversations with more people and having more people in the organization, like having advisors, that was something I never thought about was having advisors. And once I was aware of what an advisor is and what it could do, I had like 8 advisors over the course of those first 2 years. And they're just people they were thought partners that knew something I didn't know or could make introductions that I wouldn't be able to make myself. And I think like those are probably two of the most important things. Like talk to a lot of people, get other people involved. They're going to provide accountability and they're going to provide introductions and they're going to provide, actual like expert thinking on whatever you're trying to figure out. And then assume nothing. Whatever, even everything they say. Don't assume that everything they say is right. You've got to get a couple different voices, some opposing, some with it, and then with your own gut kind of make a choice. So that's a couple of things, but that's probably
Yeah.
the most helpful advice.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think a trap that early founders often get into, depending on their space, is to essentially, keep their product and keep their idea close to their chest in fear of it getting taken. And I think rarely does that actually happen. And I think usually the secrecy ends up leading to failure because no one actually knows what you're working on. And then you have this thing and yeah.
I actually did have a bad experience with that. And I won't go into that story now, but ultimately the learning and the takeaway was ideas are still a dime a dozen. It comes down to the execution. So even though someone knows exactly what you're planning on doing, they're not going to do it the way you do it. And there's a million other decisions to be made to go from idea to thing in the consumer's hand or whatever the branding and advertising experiences you're creating. So even if they take your exact idea and they see your exact pitch and they go and try and do the thing, by the time they get to the other end of it, you're going to see pieces of what you dreamed up and what you put on the page in their work. But you kind of have to just let it go and let it be a fire that fuels you up and makes you want to win harder. So there's more to be gained by talking freely about it than to be keeping it tight and private. That's the takeaway.
Did you have a negative experience of someone taking your concept and running with it independently?
I really don't want to get into that because that was a really shitty experience. And some people are two-faced at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
it was really upsetting at first, but all it did in the end was make me a little wiser and a little bit more hungry to succeed. I mean, even if someone and I hear other founders do. I mean, the founders I follow on social media, and I'm hearing them like, "Oh, this person completely ripped off all these things, and they're trying to sue me for my own IP." So you hear horror story when you talk to these people, but don't let it deter you, and also don't get too distracted by it because Nike wasn't the first shoe company, and they had a unique idea on shoes and athletes, and I'm just calling that back because you mentioned it a second ago, but it's like there can be competitors. So whether this person took your exact deck and made a company out of it. At the end of the day, once the cat's out of the bag, you launch the company, there are going to be competitors trying to do exactly what you're doing or maybe slightly different versions of it. And that is the game. And, in this case, like they got a head start. That's it. And you kind of have to like process those feelings, move on, and then just stay focused on your vision, which is unique. And even if they have exactly your deck or whatever, they're still not going to execute your vision.
Yeah. I think that's so powerful, even though, almost the worst case scenario happened with you with being open and in public with your idea, that you're still a supporter of sharing your idea with people, being public with it and getting that idea out to as many people as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so powerful. And if you had to give yourself one piece of advice today that from the entire process of building an asset, and you rewind to before you started, what would be that one piece of advice?
I mean, honestly, I feel like I would give you the same answer from a moment ago on surround yourself with other people that know more than you do on the various aspects of building the product, the brand, and don't keep it private. Talk to a lot of people, build up a team, get advisors. Don't get advisors too quickly though. Talk to people. If they keep engaging with you, like you shouldn't be signing a contract with someone on the first time you meet them. They should be helpful multiple times, and then it's like cool, like let's define like what this relationship can look like, and I want to compensate you for your time, because at the end of the day, like they're only going to do it if they actually believe in your idea, because they're not getting cash, they're getting a little bit of equity. So yeah, I mean, I think talk to a lot of people and build up a little bit of a team. I'm not saying you have to hire and spend a bunch of money, but network. I never networked before. I was so focused on the craft of like making branding and ads and commercials and stuff that I never networked. I was never playing politics in an agency. But if you're going to be a startup founder, you got to network and you got to get out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not what you know, it's really who you know that's going to
Mhm.
take you across that finish line.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting, Chad. Super insightful. Really appreciate really being an open book throughout this conversation. I'm excited to see where you and Asset are headed next.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
That was Chad O'Connell, the founder and CEO of Asset. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to click that follow button on your podcast app so you never miss a new episode. If you're looking for more practical takeaways to grow your brand, subscribe to the Brand Study newsletter. It's packed with exclusive content, deep brand analysis, and real world insights you can actually use. Sign up today at thebrandstudy.co. I'm Conrad, and I'll see you next time.